Hello, and welcome to another episode of React Roundup. This is Thomas, and I've also got Lucas here.
Hello, everybody.
In today's episode, we didn't have a guest, so we had a random conversation about random stuff.
Yes.
Related to JavaScript and React and stuff like that.
I hope you all enjoy.
See you later.
Hey folks, I just want to let you know quickly about Netlify. Netlify is a really cool system for hosting what are traditionally known as static sites. However, the real benefit that I've been finding is that I don't have to mess with a back end. I can just set things up. I build the website out. I've been using a system called 11DJS, and you just deploy it. And then anything that you have that you want to do, you can do on the front end. So if you want to pull in some kind of database with Firebase or something else, if you want to collect form data, Netlify provides all kinds of services that make it easy to do all that stuff. If you're trying to do serverless, they have a really, really neat serverless setup that will allow you to deploy your websites without having to deploy a backend, and it'll do some of the work for you. I just love it. So if you're looking for a way that you can actually deploy a website that only has front-end technology in it, gives you all the tools that you typically need for the back end without having to actually program the back end, then give them a try. Go check them out at netlify.com.
There's an interesting characteristic here at this job. It's like a larger scale than ZocDoc. They have like multiple applications and stuff like that. And there is not a strict enforcement of a framework.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's a whole new way of operating. Like back in ZocDoc, it was like everything's React, everything is going to be shared. The unit of work, of shared work, is a React component, right? Here, like right now, I'm doing a work that it's interesting because they concluded nothing is dynamic in this space. Let's just do templates. I was like, interesting. Weird. Yeah, it's been a while. And it's actually like for this particular problem, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, right tool for the right job, right?
Yeah. I wonder like what are the pros and cons? And I also wonder if this is not also, I was thinking about, is this not also like scale based in terms of like how many people you have in your company? Like it's easier and more beneficial to make these like hard decisions when you have like 10, 30, 50 people.
Yeah.
Start having like 300. It's like, how do you enforce every team of your company to use the same technology for every How do you even decide which is the best technology for all the problems of all the teams?
I mean, you don't. Well, the way that Facebook did it is they had a all carrots, no stick approach where the user interface engineering teams, so there was lots of product teams, but there are a few teams that were dedicated to building tools and stuff like that. And they were the ones that picked a tech stack to support. So a specific product team could do whatever they wanted, but they were on their own. And then they had to justify, like, why are you doing that instead of, like, your job? Why are you not just using the stuff that we've already built? Like, and if they had a good reason, then go for it.
Yeah.
But they usually just used what everybody else used. But except the ads team didn't, and that's where React came from. If it hadn't been for that rule, React never would have come out.
Yeah, this is a really interesting. It's like at some point you need like tooling teams, right? Teams to have your people being productive. But you also like people are buying products. You're hiring like really smart people.
Yeah.
That I'm facing like an issue now. So I'm working on this. I'm just doing like a quick migration from like the old monolith to the new applications here.
Yeah.
And the old page is static, but there's this one React component, right? And the React component that is being used in the page, like the configuration of the page makes it like mostly static.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let me bring the React component. And now I need to set up all like React. We need to transpile even the server files because we have JSX. And I was like, okay, let me time box. How much time does it take for me to just write this in a normal HTML template? So
what year is it?
But on the other hand, like I don't feel bad. It's like,
I mean, do what you got to do, right?
Yeah, you need to do it. But that's exactly like what an engineering problem is. It's like you need to understand what the benefits of something like, is it like bringing the whole complexity of React setup and stuff like that to one particular project that probably doesn't need it? And also like think about dynamically, if you put React, isn't like everything in this page become React in the future? And then you lose the benefits of being like a super fast, almost pure page. I don't know.
It really depends on the specifics of the product. So I did my my React Conf talk, and everything that you saw on screen was a custom built thing that it was a video player. I recorded my entire talk ahead of time, and then I had a custom video player that I could scroll to scrub through it. And I built all that just with, HTML and JavaScript.
Nice.
I regretted it. I really should have used React. But I just threw it together just because, I don't know why I did it that way. It was so stupid. But I didn't feel like I needed React for this. But then once I got 30% of the way there, I was like, crap, I really need React for this, but I gotta go. And it's just, but it was just it was just playing whack-a-mole with bugs at that point of just if I had honestly taken a look at how much work was left to do on it, if I had known of all those bugs, it would have been easier to throw it all away and start over from scratch with hooks. Dang, hooks would have made it so freaking easy. And I had free use, but I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I regretted it, but it worked out. So it was fine.
This is an interesting point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
So every platform seems to have optimized their scroll bar physics. So, swipe to what do you call it? Physics-based scrolling with touch. So you can hit it, and the faster you go, the faster it'll move. And so I wanted to take advantage of all of that physics stuff without bringing in a physics library and just get the exact same physics as scrolling. So I just mapped the scroll position to a value, and then I mapped that value to the current time of my video, and boom, done. So you can just, scrub through time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was super easy and super fun. But I tried to do two-way binding and because I wanted to be able to hit play and then play smoothly at that point and then scrub, but then that would have to sync back to the scroll bar. And it was just I should have rethought the concept and used relative positioning instead of absolute. But anyway, it was all a distraction. It was all procrastination away from writing the talk. So I wrote that thing instead of writing the talk. So stupid.
Yeah.
But it all worked out.
I really like what you said about the all carrots, no sticks.
Yeah. They don't really talk about that philosophy much, but if you ever get a chance to talk to Tomacino, he was the manager of the React team, and I think he's the director of blah, blah, blah now. He was an old MooTools guy. He left MooTools right before I joined MooTools, so we had zero overlap. He was the old MooTools Tom. I was the new MooTools Tom.
That's funny.
Yeah. He has a very good future vision of where to take things and how to play the game of cultivating things to allow them to grow properly. It's very interesting because really in our careers, the hard part is not the technical part. If the technical part is getting hard, it's we're probably overthinking it. The hard part is really the social dynamics of allowing things to grow and develop. And, you've got some people who are addicted to new and throw away good things because they're just old. And you have some people who are addicted to old and throw away new things and refuse to consider change. And balancing those two forces is really hard.
I wonder so much how does this work in different realms. So I worked in different companies that worked with completely different domains. I remember I was a consultant for a while, and you have a bunch of problems in the consulting business.
Yeah.
Let me say even a really high number, 90% of business consulting is bullshit, right? There's 10% that is really interesting. So I remember the career was 5. You have 5 steps. You start as an analyst. What do analysts do? Do what people tell you to do. And that's it.
Yes.
Face down, boom, do. And then you become a consultant. What is a consultant? A consultant is like an analyst on steroids. You do what they ask you to do, but you have a couple of analysts working with you usually. Like you're a reference to like 2 or 3 analysts, and you start going to the meetings with your manager to talk to the clients. You're more on site. You're a more on site person, right?
Yeah.
Manager is just like managing client expectations and making sure that whatever your analysts and consultants are producing is not, there's no problem.
Yeah.
So you're like transitioning, then you become a senior manager. Senior manager usually like takes care of like a bunch of teams in a given client, right? You're managing managers. When you become partner, the next step, you're actually like selling. Like you created like you created this relationship with the clients enough that you're selling projects to them. You're creating new projects. And then it's interesting because on one hand, it doesn't make sense because like you became like a driver and you end up like a seller in your career.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all.
That doesn't make any sense. But on the other hand, created like such a path that keeps some things really real. Like you don't manage if you don't do it. And you don't sell if you're not actually doing this for years.
I guess that does make sense. Who am I to judge?
That's it. It's really interesting because it's just like you talk about design system.
Yeah.
And you're creating these building blocks for people to build applications on your company. How can you do that really well inside a company if you did not create applications in the first place?
That's true. Yeah. Like Facebook has I don't know if it's just Facebook, but they have kind of a philosophy of abstraction through extraction, where, you know, if you use a pattern enough, actually, Sebastian Markbridge talks about this in one of his talks, is like,
I'm going to write those things. Wait.
Abstraction through extraction. So if you use a pattern enough that you've seen a pattern repeated multiple times, then you're allowed to think about abstracting it. Sometimes engineers, especially the ones who are more resistant to change, are the ones who tend to like the thinking process and like the engineering process. And then, so using that hammer, they'll use that tool too much and abstract things too early because they just like to do it. And they hate to see too much detail. They want to narrow things down as soon as possible. So it's kind of a psychological force. These are the sorts of things that I'm starting to talk about on my new YouTube channel. The gory nerd details of how the psychological makeup of people affects how we do things in reality and how to take advantage of that and defend yourself against that. But like some people resist abstraction so much that all of their code is just like idiomatic, just garbage code. You saw it a lot in jQuery code, notoriously. I mean, there's really good jQuery code, theoretically.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of it is just like just lots and lots of imperative code, like zero abstraction. That's kind of one end of the spectrum. And then there's like these engineering monoliths where there's this amazing API that's brilliantly designed and is used one place.
Yes.
Maybe there's a middle ground.
Yeah. This is really interesting because I've been burned like so much by early abstractions.
Yes.
And I also have been burned by like no abstractions at all.
Yeah, I've been both of these guys.
This is the real world. Like in the real world, in complex systems, it's really difficult to have linear or Boolean things.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm thinking about things like a medicine. Like a medicine is only called a medicine depending on how much you have.
Right.
Like
and
if
where and how it's delivered, and
that's it. It's like if you have a Tylenol when you have a headache, or maybe even 2, it's amazing. Like you're cured. If you have 100, you're dead. Doesn't make sense. So difference between a medicine and a poison is only the dose.
Yeah.
And this is crazy to think about.
Yeah, applying that concept to engineering, it's like, yeah, API design is the cure until you hit a certain peak, and then
until it becomes your poison. That's it.
Brilliant. I want that on a t-shirt.
Crazy. Yeah, it's like if you think about carrying smaller weights during your whole life makes you stronger. If you need to
Yeah.
carry 200, you may bust your back and then you cannot even walk
Yeah.
anymore. And it's the same thing. It's a weight. It's a piece of iron. I don't, it's like,
Yeah.
it's correct dose is everything. So find a solution is the start. Finding a medicine is the beginning. And now the dose of the medicine is another thing. So this is why I'm trying to do like the vanilla component that I'm seeing, because I don't want to insert the React medicine to this particular page because it may be overkill to this.
Right.
It may be like me just putting the hammer that I know. But on the other hand, like I also don't want to get to the stage where I'm just not using a medicine because I'm being stubborn.
That's true. And a lot of that is kind of inner work of like judging your own motivations and really thinking through like, why do I want to do this and why am I resisting this? Mm-hmm. Is this a short-term decision or a long-term decision? Am I doing that because that's what it was? Anyway, but the kind of, that reminds me of something that I realized a few years ago, is that a lot of engineering is just moving complexity around. Like there's a certain level of complexity, and where do you want to keep that complexity depends on like who owns the problem and who's maintaining it for the long term. Like what I used to do back in the day is I refused to write JavaScript on principle, and I ended up shifting a lot of the complexity into the CSS. Like I did these like nested, I remember when like nested drop-down menus were a thing. Like on the web. Miserable. I created this brilliant, in my opinion back then, entirely CSS-based nested drop-down system with zero JavaScript. It worked in IE5 and all this stuff, and I was so proud of myself. But then years later, I realized that no, that was so stupid, because then nobody could maintain that, because very few people know CSS at all. Very few engineers anyway. And most of the people who know CSS don't really use 90% of its power. So if you use something, even if it's a completely normal way to use that thing, if it's not idiomatic for other people that use those things, it's going to be confusing for them. They're not going to be able to maintain it, and it's going to be thrown away and replaced later. So like, where do you want to keep that complexity? Are you storing complexity in the learning stage of new people joining the team? Like the complexity is like they can't start working on it until they learn all these new concepts. And then you better have some really good documentation. You better know that you're sticking around to help train everybody. You better know all these things. And it kind of puts a lot of pressure on you. But if you can shift that complexity around a little bit, yeah, it might not be as beautiful and elegant or whatever, but you might be able to onboard people onto the team faster, get them up and running faster, and have skills that are transferable to some new project going forward. And that's kind of where the pressures that conspired to create React originally.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
This episode is sponsored by Sentry.io. Recently, I came across a great tool for tracking and monitoring problems in my apps. Then I asked them if they wanted to sponsor the show and allow me to share my experience with you. Sentry provides a terrific interface for keeping track of what's going on with my app. It also tracks releases so I can tell if what I deployed makes things better or worse. They give you full stack traces and as much information as possible about the situation when the error occurred to help you track down the errors. Plus, one thing I love, you can customize the context provided by Sentry. So, if you're looking for specific information about the request, you can provide it. It automatically scrubs passwords and secure information, and you can customize the scrubbing as well. Finally, it has a user feedback system built in that you can use to get information from your users. Oh, and I also love that they support open source to the point where they actually open sourced Sentry if you want to self-host it. Use the code DevChat at Sentry.io to get 2 months free on Sentry's small plan. That's code DevChat at Sentry.io.
Then we're also talking about dynamic decisions, not only static decisions. When you're talking about like, should something be easier in the beginning of the onboarding process or not? Like, what is a trade-off? And that's probably where the money is, because a bunch of analysis are like static analysis. It's like, if everybody's using the same tool, that is this tool A, we would be better. And you're like, yeah, but what about in 1 year? What about in 2 years?
Right.
What
So you
about
gotta
if
think-
no one can experiment with anything other than A? So now
Right.
you have a jQuery company in 2019.
right? Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Like, how do you deal with the and this come back to the carrots thing you're talking
Yeah.
about? It's like evolution, right? You need to have some way for some mutations happen from time to time.
You need some
understand it.
chaos.
Yeah.
Something to shake things up. Because what's that concept that where you've reached local maximum, like a ball rolling down a hill? You
Yeah.
know, from the ball's point of view, it's reached the valley floor, but it could just be in a tiny little dip out the edge of some cliff. So you need to shake it up a little bit to get it to bounce even
That's
further
it.
down.
With UIs, yeah. I remember like back in my last two jobs, in the end, we were like heavily A/B testing. And when you finally put together like a framework to A/B test, and you finally can just like start, it's like really cool. But you end up like A/B testing small features of your pages, and this is interesting because you have like small gains. But sometimes you look at the whole page and you're like, oh my God, I'm creating a kidnapper's letter, from the movies. Those letters with like cut out letters from different pages. When you look at the page as a whole, it becomes like kind of a small Frankenstein page. And then from time to time, I was thinking like, people, let's think of like now a larger scale A/B test.
Yeah.
Let's change like a whole section at a time, because we may be finding a local maximum.
Right.
But like maybe there's opportunity for something that really changes like how the user perceives this page. And
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah. All right, so
I guess I'm gonna go, and I've got other stuff I need to do. So it's been fun.
Me too. It's always fun. Thank you, and until the next.
Yes. See you later.
Bye.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.